Will it live, Oracle? Can it be saved?
Uncertain.
An apt question, if there were somewhere else to place our hope. There is not. Halo is outmatched. Our annihilation is all but certain. Unless we can glean from this artifact a defense, a game changer. On the level of the conical bullet in the 19th century, or faster-than-light travel in the 23rd. Take it, Lieutenant. She has made her choice. Do you have it?
Yes,
Say the words, please.
I have it.
Halo isn't dead, it's just missing in action. And the last time we saw its DNA in all its glory, firing on all 7 Bungie cylinders, was through the visor of Noble 6, as we fought and died to save the planet of Reach and deliver hope to humanity's Hail Mary hero, who was...
napping, out back.
Halo Reach was the culmination of all the lessons Bungie had learned, starting all the way back in 2001 with Halo CE. Reach built on the foundation of Halo 3's Xbox 360 engine, pushing the console's hardware to its technical limits, raising the bar for AI encounters, environmental renders, draw distance, and just how far the engine could go. Ultimately, producing a game that is still beautiful and highly playable even by today's standards. Reach was everything Halo fans of the day could have wanted and more, shipping not only with an epic story campaign and benchmark multiplayer experience that actually worked and didn't charge you for the privilege, but also a PvE firefight mode, theatre mode, as well as a creative coliseum in the Forge world that were now seemingly franchise staples, adding upon the growing legacy of Halo 3 and Halo ODST. Even the marketing for this game was something else, with interactive online events, multiple live-action trailers, and a multiplayer beta that was more polished than some of today's full releases. At launch, Reach delivered a base game and standard of extras that was the envy of all other gaming franchises on the market, and one that to this day 343 Industries has been unable to live up to or even match.
This armor suits you, but it cannot hide that mark.
Nothing ever will.
Sure, there was some criticism, like the gameplay inclusions of weapon bloom and the addition of sprint and armor locking abilities that were an affront to Halo 3's multiplayer purism, as well as some lore concerns based on the previously published Halo novels. But these critiques seem almost laughable now, particularly given what followed in Halo 4 and 5. In short, Reach was Bungie's swan song, a perfect bookend not only in its technical achievements, but also in terms of Halo's gameplay, story, themes, and legacy. So join me as I uncork an unsalted love letter to Halo Reach, the last great Halo title. And perhaps, in the ashes of the past, we can find the answer to the questions that 343 should be asking themselves. Those questions being, what is the DNA of Halo? Can it be saved? And how do we bring that DNA back?
Watch your mouth, son. This stuff is your history. It should remind you, Runts, what we're fighting to protect.
So what makes Halo Reach the perfect case study for the analysis of Halo's DNA? Why not the OG Halo CE, or the much-loved Halo 2 or 3? Well, the short answer is experience, or more specifically, the experience of the dev team that worked on Reach. While there is no doubt that Halo, Halo 2 and 3 are masterpieces that pushed the envelope for both the Xbox and Xbox 360, during their collective development, the team was still learning how far was too far for the game's software engine, as well as defining what Halo's final formula looked like, both in terms of gameplay and storytelling, all of which were fully realised in Reach. The Halo Reach engine and its many iterations is a fascinating case study in of itself, and while I'll avoid diving too deep on that particular tangent, it is a key component in Reach's success for a couple of reasons. One being the ongoing evolution and individual developer experience working on the engine meant that the developers had been utilising the software for over a decade by the time Reach went into production. Previous frustrations became hard-earned lessons that gave way to greater control, scale, and fidelity that had Bungie firing on all cylinders during Reach's development. Hence the capacity of the team to deliver Firefight, Forge, and Theatre alongside multiplayer and campaign. Sure, the Halo 3 engine effectively went through a full rebuild between 2007 and Reach's development, well actually multiple builds, but experience breeds efficiency, and efficiency allows for experimentation, the results of which speak for themselves. Speaking of, the Blam engine, as it became known for Reach's development, was also serving as a testing ground for the future Tiger engine behind Bungie's next project, Destiny. So despite Reach pushing the limits of the Xbox 360's hardware, the team was already looking at how to exploit and develop the software into the future. Running parallel to the software, hardware and developers behind Halo Reach, it's easy to forget that Bungie and the Halo team were the ones that pushed so hard for the online multiplayer experience that would redefine how we think about the Xbox Live that we know today. Xbox Live and Halo go hand in hand like beer and pizza, and the Halo multiplayer experience and matchmaking in particular reached damn near perfection with Halo Reach. The user-friendly interface made it easy to link up with friends, add new ones, and play one more game. Each match was preceded by the ability to actively vote for one of 3 maps, enhancing the imperfect Halo 3 veto system. You could customise your social settings, play ranked or social, and easily party up from the post-match carnage report. A stats screen which, of course, would lead to many a passionate exchange between players in the post-match lobby. The system was so elegant that it blows my mind that future titles were unable to improve on or even replicate it. Combine this with an experience system that rewarded individual feats, team assists, and actively showed your progression after each match, Reach's multiplayer became one addictive beast, scratching the brain in just such a way that demanded one more game. But none of this success is a coincidence. It is the product of a team that had learned the hard lessons of Halo, Halo 2 and Halo 3. A team that fundamentally understood that Halo wasn't about sweaty competition in isolation. It was about the gameplay loop and social interactions generated by that loop. In short, it wasn't always about winning, it was about how much fun the experience was causing, which is reflected in Bungie's sign-off letters to the fans at the end of Reach's campaign. Anecdotally, the hours I spent playing Halo Reach's multiplayer with my mates was some of my happiest as a gamer, and it was a very sad day when they finally shut down the original servers. But more on multiplayer later. While the developers comprise the technical spine and engine room that constitute the how of Halo Reach being possible, we're also here to discuss the why of the Halo Reach question. Why end with a prequel and not a follow-up to Halo 3?
If Halo 3's so good, why is there no Halo 3 2?
And what, apart from its brilliant multiplayer, makes Reach a damn near perfect case study for Halo's DNA?
Fire FPF-1, over.
Firing FPF-1. Shot.
After what can only be described as the catastrophic success of Halo 3 in 2007, Bungie was actively seeking to break away from Microsoft in order to fulfill their own destiny as an independent studio once more. While they maintained an independent flavour as part of Microsoft Game Studios with their work on the first 3 Halo titles, it was evident that tensions between the corporate and creative vision for the franchise's future would lead to continued friction if the relationship continued, particularly given that Halo was now Microsoft's most profitable IP.
Who are these people?
Some of our friends at MS.
Oh. I don't know.
Friends.
Of course. What are you talking about?
Microsoft agreed to the split, at least conditionally, and Bungie Limited Liability Company was formed in October of 2007, which would eventually become Bungie Incorporated. As part of the agreement, Bungie would remain a developer on the next 2 Halo titles, effecting a handover of responsibility of the intellectual property to the soon-to-be-raised 343 Industries.
Don't let me leave, Merv! No! 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 No!
So what was the logical step for Halo's story following Halo 3? Well, it seemed for Bungie the answer was simple enough. There wasn't going to be one. Halo 3's cliffhanger ending was going to be the end and final chapter for Master Chief's story, heading back to sleep like the mythical hero of old, ready to be awakened again in a time of great need, rather than being used as a corporate currency producing cash cow.
Somebody always pays. This time it's you.
I say this with a level of confidence based on the many interviews I've ingested over the years, but remember, I am a jellyfish that lives in a world comprised mostly of salty water, so my assessment should be taken with a spoonful thereof. Regardless, Bungie shifted targets to the next big thing after Halo 3. Halo Reach is the fortunate byproduct of that future vision. Under the terms of their exit agreement, Bungie would still be on the hook to produce another 2 Halo titles. The solution without making a direct sequel? The old nutbush box step. Side to side and back to back.
Say what?
Feeling he had shortchanged the Earth component of Halo 2, Joseph Staten, one of Halo's principal writers, was adamant about setting a story during the events of Halo 2 that remained on Earth. Initially announced as Halo Recon, the story went through several creative evolutions before becoming Halo ODST. This would service the requirement for one of the remaining Halo titles, and allow the team to right the wrong of shortchanging Halo 2 while also avoiding any direct interactions with the Master Chief that could potentially dilute the grandeur of the core trilogy. From all reports, Halo ODST was intended to be a story DLC for Halo 3, until the team was reinforced following the cancellation of Halo Chronicles, a game tie-in to Peter Jackson's cancelled Halo movie. Halo ODST focused on a squad of Helljumpers fighting through a ground war in New Mombasa. This aligns closely with the desire of Halo's writers to mature their storytelling, to tell more personal stories and focus on a more grounded, gritty boots-on-the-ground military aesthetic. This vision can be gleaned by Joseph Staten's work on Halo Contact Harvest, released roughly around the same time. A novel chronicling the UNSC's first contact with the Covenant as seen through the eyes of a young Avery Johnson. It would have also nested nicely alongside the vision for the Halo movie, which can be gleaned in the Halo 3 Landfall trailer. In the eyes of Bungie, Halo ODST was the logical creative choice for their next title, allowing them to experiment with different characters, styles, narratives and gameplay mechanics without inadvertently tarnishing the story of the Master Chief, as some characters are best suited to the dramatic epic for which they were originally written. Chief is one such example, comfortably soloing Covenant scarabs, combating the infectious flood and dropping armies of bodies in his cosmic epic of aliens versus humans, all while remaining a stoic hero archetype that players could step into the shoes of. Whereas others can be used to tell more intimate stories with less dramatic stakes that complement and nest within the primary narrative, such as Sergeant Johnson in Contact Harvest or Gunnery Sergeant Buck in Halo ODST. Fortunately, Bungie was smart enough to realise that if they wanted to tell more human stories, they'd need to find ways to tell them in parallel to Chief's story, not through him. Unlike Paramount, but I've spent a length of time bashing Paramount's Halo series, and you know what, I might do some more in a future video as well, but not right now.
Oh my goodness!
That's not to say this decision and direction was welcomed by everyone. And while Microsoft seemed very content with the future Halo titles that would avoid using the Master Chief unnecessarily, in fact Creative Assembly was straight up told they were not permitted to use Chief in their 2009 real-time strategy Halo Wars, some fans that had come to expect Halo as seen through the visor of John 117 were not happy with the creative direction. Personally, I loved Bungie's decision to tell the stories of regular soldiers, if you can call Alpha 9 ODSTs regular. The story of the UNSC soldier on the ground is an important part of Halo's DNA that Bungie absolutely nailed with ODST and Reach. It's just a shame we didn't get any further stories with the rookie released by 343 Industries after they assumed control of the franchise. Yep, a damn shame. But why is this glorified DLC that Microsoft sold as a full-price game important to the development story of Halo Reach?
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Glorified DLC?
Shoot that guy. Stop! What are you doing?
Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to imply that Halo ODST isn't a worthy Halo title. In fact, far from it. It is an absolute belter of a game that gave us Firefight, new iconic characters, and of course, Marty O'Donnell's smooth jazz. I was merely pointing out that Microsoft were being greedy bastards with how they sold the game, which didn't align to the intent of Bungie's creative team, whom saw ODST as an extension of Halo 3, and were using it as a testing bed for Reach. If I was to offer some salty conjecture, I would say that there may have been some tensions between Microsoft and Bungie at the time.
When we were inside Microsoft, we still had this amazingly ridiculous independent spirit, and we fought against Microsoft all the time. We acted like it was our IP to control, and we made the decisions.
Bungie was keen to move on with their next thing, so to expedite the process, they ticked the "You Owe Us 2 Halo Games" box with Halo ODST in order to get after Reach, and subsequently their freedom and new IP. And out of spite, Microsoft bumped ODST to a full price release in order to capitalise on the second to last creative Bungie juices. It's probably fortunate that Halo Chronicles fell by the wayside actually, freeing up Bungie team members to grow the ODST experience, otherwise the game may have felt like an undercooked cash grab rather than a UNSC love letter. Fortunately for us all, the latter proved true, and Halo ODST is now widely considered a fan favourite. Regardless of the backroom politics between Microsoft and Bungie, and getting to my point, when ODST released in September of 2009, it sported some nifty inclusions. Internally, the game showcased cutscene gameplay vignettes that would become a gaming storytelling standard moving forward, as well as an addictive round-based Firefight game mode. Externally, the game shipped with a second disc holding Halo 3's multiplayer. That did not require the Halo 3 base game to play, and most importantly, an invitation to the Halo Reach multiplayer beta.
Oh my god! Wow!
This, alongside the E3 announcement trailer in June of 2009, was concrete evidence as to what Bungie was cooking for their final title, a prequel, rather than a sequel or supplementary side story. Also, that first E3 teaser trailer, holy shit.
This is Sierra 259. You got Spartans on the ground, sir. We're not going anywhere.
Once again, the story would not be focused on the Master Chief, but rather on a squad of soldiers similar to the premise of ODST. But if 2009 was when the ticket for the Reach hype train was issued, it was 2010 that saw the train fully pull into the station.
-26. Corvette's still coming.
Firing FPF-2. Shot.
Damn, how do you stop that thing?
The next substantial look fans had at the upcoming title was in the February 2010 issue of Game Informer, wherein detailed the ambitious goals of the dev team, including increasing AI encounters from 20 as they were in Halo 3 to upwards of 40 including vehicles, and giving fans their first detailed look at Noble Team, the squad that would carry the story of Halo Reach and whom you would fight alongside of during the campaign. Also, this artwork on this particular issue of Game Informer is bloody gorgeous, and if I was Displate, I'd be capitalising on that fact. Just saying. However, this is probably the beginning of the primary lore controversy surrounding Halo Reach, being the inclusion of Spartan 3s, with the word Spartan 3 being confirmed in print, unlike in the previous announcement trailer. This confirmed what many fans had been theorising since the trailer's release. Up until the publication in Game Informer, Spartan 3s had only appeared in the Ghosts of Onyx novel published in 2006, and the Halo Evolutions story, Headhunters, published in November of 2009. And in both instances, the previous Spartan 3s had been all but KIA during high-risk, high-payoff operations. So how could a group of them be present on Reach? In hindsight, it's a relatively minor lore faux pas that was only really noticed by massive lore nuts like myself, at least as far as this jellyfish sees it anyway. But in the interest of fairness, I'd like it noted that for the record, some fans did not appreciate the change.
Noted.
The publication in Game Informer marked the beginning of a grandiose marketing campaign for Halo Reach, expanding on the marketing principles set by Halo 3. The ultimate goal of the marketing drive was for Reach to broaden the appeal of Halo beyond that of the previous titles, with the intent of connecting with more potential players through universal human themes. In essence, it was a swing for a broader audience that actually understood the appeal of Halo and how to sell it. On an unrelated note, did anyone pick up a copy of 343 Industries' Halo Cookbook?
My ass!
The tagline was simple and has become iconic in the years since. From the beginning, you know the end. Remember Reach. The first live-action trailer dropped on the 28th of April 2010. The Birth of a Spartan trailer depicted Carter A259, the future leader of Noble Team, undergoing his Spartan augmentation procedure, as well as showcasing a replica set of Mjolnir armour, as well as a future location from the upcoming game. Alongside the trailer's tagline, "Welcome to Noble Team," it also confirmed the date of the Halo Reach multiplayer beta. The Halo Reach multiplayer beta. My god. I struggle to put into words how to describe what a joyful experience this was. Releasing on the 3rd of May, I, alongside 2.7 million others, participated in a festival of madness that followed over the next 2 weeks. Assassinations alone were worth the price of admission. Combined with armor abilities like jetpacks and armor lock, new weapons, new maps, and playable elites. Playable elites! 4 maps, 5 game modes, this beta had more variety than Infinite at launch. I think I played this thing every day for the 2-week duration of the beta. The Reach beta was a showcase for the future of what I would argue was the best Halo multiplayer experience fans have ever had. Not only in terms of the variety of game modes, but also in terms of player customization. Progression incentives were simple and tied to XP that weren't locked behind terrible challenges or glorified loot boxes, meaning that the drive to acquire new ranks and armor was clear and somehow never felt like a grind or rigged lottery. There was no pay to win, it was play to unlock. So when you saw a dude repping the gun gear or security helmet, you knew you were in for a time. Armor wasn't proof of mummy or daddy's money, it was a badge of honor that reflected how much time a player had put into Reach. Jeez, I missed that. Not to mention the cool Xbox 360 avatar items you could unlock through achievements, which weren't just tied to the multiplayer. Oh god, it's all coming back to me in a glorious wave of nostalgia.
Remember?
Yes. I remember.
Double kill. Killing spree. Gained the lead.
Oh, but this beta was only a sign of the quality to come. Over the next couple of months, several TV spots followed the beta, all world-building the planet of Reach and its citizens to frame the game's upcoming narrative. One of the coolest events could be found on rememberreach.com, where fans could plot a point on a light monument to the members of Noble Team. Plotted by a physical robot over the course of 20 days, the monument grew and faded based on the level of interaction from users. But all this paled in comparison to the crescendo of the marketing campaign. Halo Reach live-action launch trailer. To this day, live-action Halo never got any better than this. Deliver Hope dropped on the 26th of August 2010. Directed by Noam Muro, this 2-minute masterpiece not only captured the theme of Halo Reach, hope born of sacrifice, but also the very essence of Halo. From the macro scale of the Human Covenant war to the micro details of weapons, shields and vehicles and the intimate interactions between soldiers on the battlefield, this was a perfect blend of practical and digital effects that still hold up today. Coupled with brilliant sound design and a haunting score, this short film is like a monument to everything live-action Halo could have and should have been. I don't think there was a single person that saw this trailer that couldn't have been excited for the game's release. It was nothing short of exceptional. Simply a perfect bookend in what was Xbox's biggest marketing campaign ever up until that point. And appropriately enough, the perfect entree for the story campaign to follow. Halo Reach released on the 14th of September 2010. And you bet your Halo Recon pre-order inclusion that I was there for the midnight launch to grab my limited edition copy that came with assorted fan service paraphernalia. So, after 15 months of eagerly awaiting the game's full release, I fired up the Xbox 360, delicately placed my new copy of Reach in the tray, gripped my Halo Reach controller, and braced myself for a long night.
Shot over. Shot out. Splash over. Splash out. Rounds complete. Over. Rounds complete. Out.
For the next 8 to 12 hours, I was entranced. Reach's campaign was damn near flawless, a masterclass in visual storytelling that introduced new characters and gameplay mechanics that felt like they'd been part of Halo from day one. The attention to detail is something I still continue to notice and appreciate today. Straight out of the gate, Halo Reach delivered on its promise. From the beginning, you know the end. As you see a Spartan helmet, cracked and broken amidst a burning world, scored beautifully again by Martin O'Donnell, whom in the opinion of this jellyfish, did his best work on Halo Reach, weaving in classic Halo callbacks alongside new tracks that perfectly captured the game's aesthetic of fighting a losing battle. You're then introduced to your Spartan, Noble 6, whom is holding the same cracked helmet from the opening sequence, now perfectly serviceable. And for the first time in Halo's history, you have the choice as to whether Noble 6 is male or female, not just blue or pink. This may seem like a small deal in today's gaming industry, but it was a welcome surprise in 2010 Halo. More to the point, your Spartan's customization was linked between campaign and multiplayer, making Noble 6 unique amongst previous protagonists and making them truly your Spartan, your colours, your logo, your armour, your soldier.
What do you suppose that is?
You are a replacement for Noble Team, tying in neatly to the Deliver Hope trailer where we saw what happened to the previous Noble 6. Noble is a special operations team under the command of Colonel Holland, whom have been sent to Reach to investigate suspected rebel insurrectionist activity and locate a missing fire team. Also a callback to one of the game's lead-up trailers. God damn, that marketing for Reach slapped. You're briefly introduced to the other Spartans of Noble Team. Carter, Noble Team's leader. Kat, his 2IC and tech expert. Emil, the close quarters specialist. George, the heavy weaponeer, and Jun, Noble Team sniper, all of whom have unique designs and personalities that come out as the story progresses. This is also the first time we've seen Spartans actively removing their helmets and showing their faces in-game. Less Noble 6, of course. A deliberate story choice by Halo Reach's writers to show the humanity beneath the Mjolnir armour, making the Spartans more relatable in order to tell a more personal story. Carter gives you a brief dressing down that serves as a primer for the upcoming gameplay.
One thing, I've seen your file, even the parts the Oni censors didn't want me to. I'm glad to have your skill set. But we're a team. That lone wolf stuff stays behind. Clear?
Got it, sir.
You will not be fighting alone during the campaign, unlike in previous Halos for the most part, and instead will fight alongside Noble Team, before you mount up and head to the Visegrad relay for the first mission, which is also a neat little callback to a previous trailer.
Sierra 6-0. Noble Team is airborne and set for combat insertion.
The first mission does the usual hand-holding of introducing new mechanics and begins laying the groundwork for the game's outstanding environmental storytelling, which begins with the draw distance. Oh, the glorious draw distance, which gives Reach a sense of scale unseen in previous Halo games. The skyboxes in Reach in particular continue the long tradition of beauty from the previous Halo titles, but become an essential part of the environmental storytelling as the game progresses. During the first mission, Reach is lush, green, and beautiful. Local flora and fauna are abundant, and it was a real focus of the dev team to make the planet feel like a character, and we'll discuss that more later. Following the traditional Y-axis prompt, your Falcon, which is a new inclusion for Halo Reach, touches down in the virile farmland of Visegrad as you begin your search for 3 Charlie 6, the lads from one of the Reach live-action trailers. Very quickly, the game starts to highlight the distinct personalities of the other Spartans, all of whom you will fight alongside of during the campaign. The first mission is George's time to shine. You see him speak the local Reach language, Hungarian for those of you playing at home, which is a nice callback to the Halo ODST trailer from the previous year. Despite being a Spartan too, and the most physically intimidating of the group, he is the most personable of the group, and the one seemingly most interested and concerned about the people of Reach. The mission goes sideways as you discover what's left of 3 Charlie 6 and several dead civilians, only to then be contacted by the Covenant, whom have had a bit of a glow-up from Halo 3 and ODST. New Jackal cousins known as Skirmishers are your first contact. The Skirmishers are promptly followed by Grunts, some of which now wear helmets, forcing a double tap to the head, and the Elites. The first encounter shows off the upgraded graphical fidelity from Halo ODST, with sparks, explosions and plasma rounds greatly enhanced for Reach. The combat AI has also been reworked, making encounters feel less predictable than in previous titles, and making the Elites downright scary on higher difficulties. On that note, Reach made the deliberate design choice to have the Covenant no longer speak in English, instead opting for visceral alien dialects. This is not only a cool piece of continuity with Halo CE, where the Covenant also speak in their alien tongues, but also goes a long way to making the Covenant feel like an alien threat again, rather than being relatable and, at times, downright funny.
Demon! The church store called, and they're all out of you!
That's not to say that Reach is without humour. In fact, the Spartans of Noble Team have some genuinely funny moments throughout the script.
You're in my light, Commander.
Not to mention that the combat dialogue of the UNSC soldiers is greatly increased from previous Halo titles. Alongside with the "I would have been your daddy" skull, you get some absolute zingers.
This qualifies as lone wolf stuff, Noble 6.
Reach also adds civilian vehicles to the sandbox for the first time, and watching George jump on the back of the ute and sling his gun across the roll bar is bloody peak Halo. Reach does a great job of blending the old sandbox with the new, reintroducing the Covenant plasma rifle, or repeater as it's known in Reach, alongside the Spirit dropship, as well as adding new UNSC weapons like the DMR, which quickly became a favourite of mine. A grenade launcher and the Spartan laser also make a return as well. Where are all these new weapons in Halo CE?
Sorry, guns. It's classified.
Fortunately, the legendary beam rifle Jackal snipers have not been invited back for Reach, instead being given a laser rifle similar to that of the Sentinel beam from Halo 2. The cinematography in the cutscenes also works to sell a less grandiose story, with shots appearing to be like a war journalist POV alongside the action, or mounted to stationary positions like security cameras. It's a little thing, but it goes hard throughout the game and is at times downright artistic. But more importantly, it sells a sense of visceral legitimacy to the action taking place, which we haven't seen in previous Halos. Reach is also the first Halo title that uses the art of motion capture, which allowed for more sophisticated character movements both in-game and in cutscenes. Despite the grittier cinematography, Halo Reach stays true to the colourful art style of the previous Halos, another consistency that subsequent games absolutely lost. The mission concludes with a skirmish between Noble Team and a group of elite zealots, whom escape and continue to dog the player throughout the rest of the game. Noble restores power to the Visegrad relay and warns Colonel Holland about the Covenant having made planetfall on Reach. Also, I love how Alana Tal, who voices Kat, pronounces Colonel Holland.
Which is why I'm splicing into the main overland bundle to get you a direct line to Colonel Holland.
Reach once again grew the cast of voice actors from Halo 3 and ODST, with many fan favourites making a return. The diverse range of actors is just another element in the growing list of things that helped sell Reach's sense of scale. Reach's stakes build with each mission, providing a brief moment of victory before being totally undercut by an ever-looming threat, and the winter contingency is merely the first of many examples. In the business, we call this tension building and foreshadowing. The scenes in Visegrad are brilliant in terms of initial character development. The hint of more than just a professional relationship between Carter and Kat, the only original members of Noble Team still remaining. The notable personality clash between the personable George and the aloof close quarters specialist Emil, whom is the only other Spartan in the game that doesn't remove their helmet. And Kat's reluctance to accept the new Noble 6, given what happened to the last guy at her expense. It's the little things that sell these relationships. Carter instinctively shielding Kat from the elite sword, George removing his helmet to speak to a civilian, and Emil's laugh at the gesture. The way Kat snatches the data module from 6, telling him to stay in his lane. It's all brilliant and succinct characterization delivered through actions and punchy dialogue. Paramount, take note.
Come on, man, you don't play Spartan Attack?
I don't keep score.
Scoreboard! Scoreboard! Oh, what happened to your friend?
Cut to the first of many environmental biome changes as Noble Team commenced their assault on Sword Base for the next mission. Nestled within the glacial shelf of Apos, which is
presently under siege from a Corvette-class Covenant vessel.
Kat is your oppo for this one, and she has some absolute zinger lines of dialogue throughout the mission.
Welcome to the Office of Naval Intelligence. An ONI representative will be with you shortly.
I doubt that very much.
Once again, the Skybox does some heavy lifting in terms of the environmental storytelling. While you conduct your ground-based objectives, there is an air battle being waged above Sword Base. This becomes a theme for the remainder of the game, with your actions feeding the larger military picture of the battle to save Reach. The Sword Base mission also clearly demonstrates the alternate route system that becomes a key part of Reach's gameplay.
AA gun is to the west, comms arrays to the east. Let's roll. Good call. Let's get comms first. I agree. Go for the gun.
There are normally 2 or more ways to approach an objective. Sometimes it's as simple as going left or right. Other times it's about the weapons you take in that will shape your approach. And in some instances, it's possible to avoid fights altogether. The choice and consequences are yours. Again, it's a small thing and it's taken for granted in the modern era of open world RPGs, but having it so good with Reach you will notice when you don't have alternate pathing options in modern FPS games. The mission comes to its conclusion with you reuniting with your fellow Noble Team members and fighting through Sword Base Actual, which should look very familiar to those who played the Reach beta. You make it to the roof and alongside George and Emil you take direct intervention against the Covenant air threat, pushing back the overhead Corvette.
Beautiful, ain't it? Someone should take a picture.
Damn right it is, George. Simply majestic. Sword Base and the first contact location in the winter contingency are environments that double across campaign, firefight or multiplayer. And there are several key locations throughout the story that get this treatment. Apparently it was an absolute arse pain for the devs, but so help me I love it that it never felt lazy in Reach the way they worked these levels into the story. There is further character development with each Spartan as the game's next cutscene introduces us to Dr. Catherine Halsey, the mother of the Spartan 2 program and a well-known character from the novels. Voiced by the lovely Jen Taylor, Halsey's depiction in Reach is pretty close to how I personally envisioned her from the novels. Perhaps a pair of spectacles wouldn't have gone astray, but it is a relatively minor nitpick. Halsey is frosty with the Spartan 3s, and only shows George the slightest bit of familiarity as a Spartan 2.
What have you done with my armor?
Just some additions I've made.
This plays on the well-established lore that the Spartan 3s are not the work of Dr. Halsey, but rather Colonel Ackerson, whose project was in direct funding competition to hers. And as a fan of the books, it was nice to see that relationship reflected here. But if you were a Halo gaming normie, you didn't lose anything in this interaction for having not read the books. Halsey explains that the Elite Zealots, which are also a new sandbox inclusion for Halo Reach, were searching the Visegrad relay for any excavation data that might help them gain access to alien technology.
Survivor account suggests such teams are small, nimble, and almost always Zealot class. No doubt they came to the station for the abundance of ONI excavation data stored there.
Which apparently is a pretty standard SOP for these special operations teams. Halsey, already aware that Kat is in possession of said data, demands that it be handed over immediately. The scene depicts Carter's by-the-book orders are orders mentality, as well as Kat's disregard for such things outside the lane of Noble Team, which becomes important later. Without explaining it in excruciating detail, the data module becomes an important piece of Halo Reach's narrative. Key bits of the jigsaw puzzle that is Reach's story get dropped like this throughout multiple cutscenes, and if you're not paying attention, they are easily missed. The next mission is a tasteful homage to Halo CE's Truth and Reconciliation, right down to the opening chapter title. The mission takes place alongside Jun as you recon a Covenant LZ in order to better understand the scale of the invading army. Jun is the character we learn the least about throughout the game, and it's oddly appropriate given his solitary nature. But not unlike Kat, he too gets some witty one-liners throughout the mission.
You know, this stuff is stolen.
What, you gonna arrest me?
No, I'm gonna steal it back.
Nightfall showcases the new assassination mechanic if you hadn't already discovered it, and also introduces us to the best inclusion of any Halo game ever. As a useless piece of trivia, apparently in an early build of Reach you could raise and lower the forklift's prongs. But this could cause a glitch that sent items, including the Rancor-like Gunter, flying into the stratosphere. Also, there were plans to make the Gunter rideable at one point, with Covenant weaponizing them later in the game.
The mule was rideable at one point.
We could board, run up its back, and stuff a grenade into its mouth. It was going to be amazing.
And wasn't there a point where elites were going to ride the mule? And
yes, and oh man, we went through so many different iterations on that thing. We had the elites riding it, we had grunts riding it. They had like shoulder-mounted cannons. It was really goofy at one point.
I don't think people understand how painful game development actually is.
It even vomited out like hot rocks.
Oh, really? I never saw that.
That would kill people from a distance.
He spit acid at one time.
Yes.
Oh, really? It was. There's a lot of ideas for that guy.
And while I'm on the subject, apparently this is true of the mower bird as well. You know, it's a good sign when the developers are letting their creativity get the best of them, building out assets to a playable state and then being forced to take them out because they're ridiculous, rather than having to omit them because of technological or time constraints. The art design team worked overtime for this mission, creating a feeling of nightfall without compromising on gameplay. This is possible because the devs were able to push their dynamic lighting assets from 4 sources, as at the time of Halo 3, to upwards of 20 in Reach, to the point where individual plasma bolts can cast their own light. After fighting through a colourful barrage of blue, green and purple, the mission ends with the second, but far from last, R-shot of the game. So hot tip, there is nothing wrong with playing as a female Spartan. Damn! But this mission and its glorious cheeks pale in comparison to the set piece to follow.
All the way out. Go dark and fly visual until you are 1,500 kilos from Superior Tower. Godspeed.
Tip of the Spear goes close to being Bungie's crowning achievement in terms of on-screen assets, no pun intended. Scale, draw distance and environmental gameplay and storytelling working together in unison.
Definitely one of the big ideas that we wanted to sell with this level is the idea of the big battle, from the opening cinematic with all of those vehicles all active at once to, dozens of individual units that you're fighting, and then out in the background we want to give the sense that you're part of this large war that's erupting all over the planet.
And you bloody nailed it, mate. The cause and effect gameplay that drives the storytelling advances in this mission are amazing in terms of gameplay design. Tip of the Spear is what right looks like. As per the plot, clearly articulated by DOT, Noble Team's AI, and the audience's convenient exposition device,
large Covenant deployments have occurred undetected, and we are now under attack across the Vieri territory, including orbital defenses. As per the winter contingency, we are countering on every front.
Noble Team is part of a collective counterattack to prevent a Covenant breakout from their LZ. The two ground armies are forced to collide because the Covenant currently have air superiority, leaving the UNSC with no choice but a shock and awe ground offensive. DOT's mission briefs are some of the best context dumping I've ever seen in a video game, and serve as a creative way to frame each mission without feeling contrived. She is also an unlockable Firefight voice, but I digress. During gameplay, the skybox and backgrounds are awash with details of the two armies colliding, from a pitched air battle between Falcons and Banshees, to firefights at the ground level between Warthogs and Ghosts. This is possible due to Reach's imposter mechanic, which effectively lowers the render and shaded details on distant objects, freeing up memory for added detail on things in the foreground or focus for the player. This allows for impressive details up close and dynamic environmental storytelling in the distance. It's become quite standard in modern first-person shooters, but at the time of Halo Reach, a very impressive achievement. When Noble Team break in, you fight alongside Cat once again, and you get your hands on the UNSC grenade launcher for the first time. With your new ordnance, you knock out a section of Covenant anti-air coverage, which allows a UNSC frigate and longswords to move in. The frigate and longswords can then take out the immediate Covenant air threat. Because of this, a Pelican bridging asset can now move in to open the next gameplay area for you. Ah, cause and effect storytelling, how bloody good. Particularly as it's more than just pushing a button to open the next area, but we'll talk more about that shortly. You and Cat then move forward and take out another Covenant anti-air battery, and because you take out this section of anti-air coverage, aerial reinforcements can be inserted and seize and hold the ground while you and George jump into a Falcon that can now make a push on the spire. All of your actions in this mission genuinely feel like you're making a difference in the fight and are part of a larger operation, all enabled by the brilliant cause and effect environmental storytelling and gameplay. But broader than the gameplay itself, there is a very real sense of a genuine military operation that is taking place, with objectives, supplementary objectives, and synchronization of effects to achieve those end states. And this is something that sets Reach apart from other Halo titles. Military authenticity is something that subsequent Halo games absolutely lost, feeling more akin to a Marvel superhero movie than a military sci-fi. All of Reach's set pieces are centered around a campaign to save the planet of Reach that is orchestrated by the UNSC. Because of this firm military underpinning, the game works hard to maintain your suspension of disbelief that you are a soldier in this fight. And because of this careful weaving of gameplay and story, you never feel like you're being told to run to the far side of a room to push a button that opens a door, only to run to another button in another room that opens a different door. Sure, there is plenty of button pushing in Reach, after all it is a Halo game, but genuinely speaking, the button push would lead to something very kinetic as a result, normally driving the military campaign and story thereof forward. After you choose one of a plethora of ways to fight to the top of the spire, you push a button. You then haul ass out of there in time to see Frigate Grafton shove a Mac round up the Covenant Tower, and for a brief moment you bask in your success. Until...
No, somebody tell me this ain't happening.
This line from George is fantastic, further demonstrating his desperation to protect the lives of the people of Reach. Could that be more foreshadowing? Also, let's take a moment to marvel at what must have been the best homage to the opening of Star Wars we've ever seen in a Halo game. Because this shot, mwah, chef's kiss. Everything from the gameplay that led up to it, to the sense of scale, to the lighting, music and effects, all working in unison to elevate the growing sense of urgency and stakes for the battle to save Reach, and how small you are in comparison to that fight. So as it turns out, the Spire was part of a sophisticated cloaking system for both the Covenant LZ and its point of origin, the Long Night of Solace. But I'll let Auntie Dot explain.
Our foe is more devious than we imagine. That spire was indeed a teleporter linked to a cloaked Covenant supercarrier, a grave threat. Thankfully, help is imminent. 60% of the UNSC fleet is en route to Reach from existing deployments.
Having failed to contain the Covenant breakout, Noble Team, now fighting with guerrilla tactics with limited resources against a growing threat, form a plan to take out the Covenant supercarrier. This is another great scene that highlights the distinct personalities of each Spartan. Having seemingly exhausted all conventional options against the Covenant, Carter is at a loss as to what to do next, arguing with his 2IC, who once again has a non-conventional solution to the problem. And the observations from George and Jun indicate that this is something that happens regularly.
Uh-oh. Who's your money on this time?
Her.
You always pick her.
She's always had him dialed in.
Adding credence to the concept that Carter and Kat, again, are closer than the other Spartans. Kat briefs the plan to jerry-rig a slip-space drive, transport it to a Covenant vessel, and then dock with the supercarrier. And even the aloof Emil is inspired to comment.
It's scary. You know that.
Reflecting how dire the situation has become, even Carter agrees to take this to the chain of command for decision.
Well, there's no way in hell he's going to go for this.
After Colonel Holland agrees to go for this, the next mission is a technical marvel that runs you through almost all the environments of Halo Combat Evolved and one totally new frontier, all in one mission. You start by storming the beach alongside a full-strength Noble Team, as Covenant drop pods and Seraph fighters rain down hell from the sky. This battle is off chops, and if you remain outside, the Covenant will continue to spawn indefinitely. It's also another clear homage to Halo Combat Evolved's beach assault. Depending on your lust for Covenant blood, you eventually break into the Saber launch facility, fighting through corridors from yet another map that will be repurposed for the multiplayer. And then the reveal. Yup, you're going into space. This cutscene is something I can only describe as beautiful, and is comfortably the most photogenic sequence of any Halo game, and it's still gorgeous even today. But what's more impressive about it is that it's all in-game. The Sabre launches, punches through the clouds, breaks orbit and then rendezvous with Anchor 9, all without a single loading sequence. You were fighting on the ground, and now you're in space, and straight into the action once again. Outstanding game design. The cutscene is more than just a visual marvel that's a testament to Bungie's art department, it also demonstrates the scale of the battle being waged on Reach. Multiple continents are burning, with explosions that can be seen from space, with the reality beginning to dawn on you. Despite your victories thus far, the fight for Reach is not going well. You then dogfight through 3 types of Covenant spacecraft, defending Anchor 9, which for the keen-eyed observer should be recognisable from the Birth of a Spartan trailer, and will also come as a DLC map pack later down the road, before escorting a jerry-rigged slip-space drive bomb onto a Covenant Corvette en route to refuel with the supercarrier. Martin O'Donnell and his team's sound design for this mission is exceptional. Starting with the conventional ground combat and moving into the distant echoes of space battles through to the muffled sounds of low-gravity combat, as well as the concussive bubble of grenade detonations with accompanying ringing of the ears, Reach's sound design is still some of the best of any Halo title. It also has some of the best mission variety of any previous game, which is on full display in the Long Night of Solace. Seriously, all they needed to do was throw in like a warthog section into this mission and it would have come close to having the full set of mission types. And from the devs, that comment apparently isn't too far from the mark in terms of their original intent.
I have to say, this was one of the more complex missions we've ever done. With the Wafer and the Corvette, and Long Night of Solace, and the Pelican, and who's coming in and who's going, and where
It used to be more complex. Probably would have been another 40 minutes of gameplay, at least.
Despite a successful infiltration, however, the Long Night of Solace mission is not without cost. I wonder why the camera lingers on that re-entry jetpack. But despite the loss of the UNSC Savannah, you have achieved your mission.
What could possibly go wrong?
Distance is closing on this vessel's refueling track with the Covenant supercarrier. 76 seconds to end point.
So, it's gonna be like that. Well, I got good news and bad news. This bird took some fire and our thruster gimbal is toast, which means the only way off this slag heap is gravity.
And the good news?
That was the good news.
Determined to save the people of Reach, as we've already seen glimpses of throughout the interactions in the story thus far, George elects to stay behind and detonate the slipspace drive. George gives you no choice in the matter as he yeets you back to the planet's surface, which I can't actually watch now without hearing Caboose's voice from Red vs. Blue and the time he accidentally went into the Reach campaign.
Goodbye! Thank you for the ride! You are my new best friend and I will never forget you! You probably can't hear me though because everyone knows there's no oxygen on a roller coaster! I am yelling quieter now because I'm further away from you!
And I'm not mad about that. Jokes aside, the first time you play this mission, George's sacrifice weighs on you, and you hold on to the hope that despite his loss, this will begin to bring the war back into your favour. Because after all, this is a Halo game, and in previous Halos, the hero always comes through.
Slipspace rupture detected.
Gamma station control, reading multiple pings below the orbital defense grid.
Slipspace rupture detected.
Yeah, we're picking up anomalies too. Are you reading
Slipspace rupture detected.
Multiple Covenant signatures.
Slipspace
Does anyone have a
detected.
vision? They're everywhere!
Slipspace rupture detected.
The whole damn Covenant, please.
Slipspace rupture detected.
A growing sense of dread fills you as you contemplate the seemingly impossible task ahead. Watching a dozen carriers slip into the system under the orbital defense grid after everything it cost to bring down one was an absolute holy shit moment the first time I played Reach. And it's moments like this that make Reach the gem that it is. The visceral gut reactions to scenes like this stick with you long after you've put the controller down. And it's a masterclass in show don't tell storytelling. We know what this fleet's arrival means because we just witnessed the cost of trying to take down one of these ships. The moment of bittersweet victory is completely undercut by the sheer size of the Covenant. This is the pinnacle of stake raising. Not only do we know the cost of what is required to defeat one of these things, we also have no more slipspace drives to jerry-rig. While the action in these scenes speaks for themselves, I would be remiss not to mention that Reach's score is what sells them as advertised. Halo Reach would not be the game that it is without Martin O'Donnell's music. But after this moment, how much worse could it get?
Aw, damn! Tip of the spear, nothing. It's the whole godforsaken fleet. Fire!
Exodus and the mission that follow are a downright masterclass in environmental storytelling. The next level opens with a glorious asset shot, and the burning carrier isn't bad either. As you move into the city of New Alexandria, which is under siege by the Covenant, you uncover increasingly grisly scenes of dead civilians. You're also injured from your re-entry, highlighting that once again, you are not the Master Chief, and you are therefore encouraged to seek out a first aid kit to get back to full strength. The health mechanic in Halo Reach, both in terms of shields and the health bar, serves two purposes in terms of storytelling and gameplay. First, it's designed to make you, as a Spartan 3, feel more human and therefore vulnerable, when compared to the Chief of Halo 3. Secondly, it forces you to explore the maps in search of health packs because your health doesn't regenerate, which allows you to soak up more of the game's environments. This was a deliberate decision by the game's developers to make the game feel more reminiscent of Halo Combat Evolved's exploring mechanic, and also is a continuation of the dynamics they set with Halo ODST's health mechanic. As you move deeper into the city, you make contact with the Brutes, whom, unlike the disciplined elites conducting key military operations against the UNSC, have been unleashed on the city civilians. Seemingly everywhere you look, there are more and more Covenant, with increasing levels of destruction and dead civilians. There comes a point in the mission where you're so overwhelmed with targets, even on lower difficulties, that it's seemingly impossible to shoot them all. And to highlight that point, as you're overwhelmed by Covenant ground and air assets all gunning for you simultaneously, you are forced to watch helplessly as a civilian evacuation shuttle is shot out of the sky by one of the overhead corvettes. You then rejoin the ground troopers and manage to clear the lane long enough to allow the last shuttles to escape, but your day only gets worse from here. In the next mission, you scramble to complete objectives as the Covenant begin to glass the city, laying waste to towering skyscrapers all across New Alexandria. New Alexandria is loaded with Easter eggs. There are probably more Easter eggs in this one mission than the rest of the game combined. From character cameos to hidden vehicles, the more you explore, the more there is to find, including the possibility to evacuate Gunnery Sergeant Buck from ODST.
Command, this is Gunnery Sergeant Buck with the 11th ODST, over.
Copy, Gunnery Sergeant. Go ahead.
Phantom's got one of my squads pinned. I need to take it out and evac my troopers.
There is a sense of unparalleled freedom as you zip around the map in your Falcon, with the ability to land on almost any building and engage the Covenant at your leisure between key objectives. Although don't descend too low, the streets below are quite dangerous.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Despite the levity that can be had during the mission, it is at this point where the game takes a tonal shift. Having just lost George and a city full of civilians, the question gets asked.
You want to know if we're losing?
I know we're losing. I want to know if we've lost.
You don't have long to ponder the question, however, though, as the Covenant track Carter's communications with Colonel Holland and attempt to glass your position. This cutscene is another brilliant example of Reach's attention to detail and cause and effect storytelling. Kat, being the only Spartan not wearing her helmet and facing the windows, appears temporarily blinded and or shaken by the glassing beam. For whatever the reason, in her daze, she misses the elevator button, causing a delay to your elevator's descent. This means Carter, Emil and Jun are well ahead of you by the time you hit the basement, which forecasts your position. As you and Kat make for the bunker, Kat becomes the second victim of Noble Team. What follows is a vision of the end as you emerge from the bunker and see the city in flames, the crown jewel of Reach reduced to rubble. But even in this darkest hour, a light of hope remains. Now, I've seen the criticism that Noble Team are two-dimensional caricatures that lack depth, and I'd be lying if I said there was no truth to those claims. And true enough, if you blast through the campaign, forgetting to stop and smell the roses, you will miss a lot of the subtle interactions and character development on display in the cutscenes and the in-game thespian animation system. The thing about Noble Team is, despite being striking and visually distinct, their character moments are subtle and can be easily lost against the grandeur of the story's stakes and the transformation of the planet of Reach from prosperous farm world to war-torn battlefield. Unlike the ODSTs of Alpha 9, whom are given plenty of room to develop in a tightly focused character story in the comparatively restricted New Mombasa. It's a bit of a creative irony that Reach itself eclipses Noble Team. when one of the stated goals of the developers was to tell a more human and character-driven story. But just because Noble Team's moments are not the sole focus of the narrative like they are in ODST, does not mean that they are absent. Carter is the perfect example. When we meet him, he is the fearless leader archetype, dependable and assertive, but his personality evolves drastically from the first mission to the last. During the early missions, he is in control, weapon up, by the book, and firm with his direction and decisions. As the Covenant begin to take control of the planet, he becomes wary and increasingly open to non-conventional solutions, willing to bend the rules to achieve the Commander's intent. After losing George, he softens. Compare your first interaction with Carter.
Not gonna lie to you, Lieutenant. You're stepping into some shoes the rest of the squad would rather leave unfilled.
To this.
It's good to have you back. Sorry I came alone. Make him proud.
After losing Kat, he changes. He walks with his shoulders slumped and his line delivery is flat and non-commanding.
We all do, ma'am.
While the rest of Noble Team lock in with their weapons raised, he does not, stowing his rifle and sauntering along without any urgency. Visual cues made possible by Reach's variable gate system and motion capture, permitting changes to character movements and more nuances in performance than was possible during the time of Halo 3. Kat's death is the beginning of Carter's personal defeat, which culminates in the final mission of the game, but it's subtle character work that may not be apparent during the first playthrough. Fortunately, due to Reach's massive potential replayability with things like daily and weekly challenges, different difficulties, as well as searching for data pads and other additional Easter eggs, these subtle character moments become very clear on repeat run-throughs. But I've gotten ahead of myself again, and the job's not over yet, as you begin the second to last mission of the game. Returning to Sword Base, its clean, snow-capped mountains are now a burning hellscape. The glaciers have melted and the trees are burning, with embers drifting in the air. Reach is now in its death throes, choking beneath the boot of the Covenant invasion. Despite being the same location from the second mission, it is now a totally different place. Buildings are flooded by the melted ice caps. Covenant anti-air batteries stand in the place of UNSC hardpoints, spewing plasma flak against the remnants of the UNSC. The once blue skybox is now dark and filled with smoke. The beauty of Reach has been stripped by the Covenant invasion. A night and day comparison from opening mission until now. This is the real story of Halo Reach, the fall of the planet as seen through the eyes of Noble Team and the UNSC, and its fantastic environmental storytelling. And if I was to offer some more salty conjecture, I would say this is one of the primary reasons why people feel so shortchanged by Noble Team's characters. Because it's hard to deliver on in-depth character development of 5 Spartans the way Bungie managed to do with Halo ODST, and do justice to the destruction of a planet all at the same time. Not that the developers did a poor job with either endeavour in my opinion, but I can understand the criticism, particularly when they set out to tell a more human story, which has character connotations that would be more reflective of the characterization seen in Halo ODST. The balance between epic grandeur and human intimacy is a difficult one to strike in the gaming medium, particularly in a first-person shooter, but I personally think Bungie did an amazing job of visually representing the fall of the planet Reach, all while juggling a team of new characters and a key theme that we'll discuss when the time is right. But all is not lost yet, and in classic Halo style, you're given a chance to lay the smackdown on the Covenant with a Scorpion tank, as you and the remainder of Noble Team break back into the now ruined Sword Base to complete Colonel Holland's final mission and prevent any sensitive data from falling into Covenant hands. I also think it's appropriate in a meta sense that we get to replay Sword Base at the end of the game, as I'm quite sure this is a nod to the early days of Halo CE, where we basically played the same levels in reverse for the second half of the game. But all is not as it seems.
Well, it's pointing us a click and a half east and 2,000 feet underground.
I didn't bring my shovel, Commander.
Sir, I say we go AI free on this one. Obviously, these coordinates are junk, and the longer we go chasing...
What is this, Dot?
Our revised route, Commander.
Alright, we came this far.
This may be my favourite interaction in the entire campaign. Not just for the reasons I've already explained about Carter, but because it adds some much needed levity to the situation, and also shows how switched on the Spartans are, at least the 3 with their heads still in the game, with their urban clearance drills very similar to the A Spartan Will Rise trailer. I assess that Bungie may have wanted to put more of these animations in the game, but ran out of opportunity, hence why they ended up in one of the trailers. However, that is a total blind guess on my behalf, so don't take it as gospel. But more importantly, this scene is a bit of a rug pull moment for the team and the player. After making your way down the monorail of mystery, you must defend Dr. Halsey as she finalises her research data for the latchkey discovery. Remember the data module? As it turns out, this piece of data holds the key to humanity's survival, and it is up to Noble Team to ensure that it falls into the right hands. Another cool piece of environmental storytelling is that the ice cave is collapsing around you, creating a greater sense of urgency for the task at hand. Curse those Covenant bastards and their rapid acceleration of global warming, the true enemy of humanity. The fight that follows is an intense one, particularly by legendary standards, as the Covenant effectively throw everything they have at you, less scarabs. I wonder if we'll tangle with those before the game ends. But fortunately, you're given an absolute arsenal in which to defend yourself with, meaning that you can play to your strengths and playstyle, which seems fitting for what is effectively a final stand. Also, for those inclined to go Easter egg hunting, this mission has one of the most heartfelt developer nods to a community I think I've ever seen. Effectively a massive Bungie love letter to the Halo internet community that made the games what they are. After holding off the hordes, you gain access to Halsey's lab, and she confirms what you already know.
Mankind is outmatched. When Reach falls, and it will fall, our annihilation is all but certain.
But there is one mission left, and it's the most important. Noble Team must deliver an unnamed AI, whom we all know to be Cortana, and the hope she carries to the Pillar of Autumn. See what they did there? Oh, the symmetry and synergy to have the last mission of the game a direct reflection of the Deliver Hope trailer. The one where the last Noble Six died, delivering hope in the form of a tac nuke. It's brilliant. I also love that Cortana's reveal is accompanied by her Halo 3 theme music. After a full game of new music, it smacks you in the feels like you wouldn't believe. Cortana chooses you to be her carrier, not unnoticed by Carter, and once again, it's a nice little tie-in to the game's early promotional material, which describes
Noble Six, the team's most recent addition. My, so much black ink. Six has made entire militia groups disappear. Curious. Hyper-lethal. There's only one other Spartan with that rating.
A fact that Cortana would be keenly aware of. Noble separate for the final time, with Carter telling Jun not to let Halsey fall into enemy hands. And I love the connotations in his response.
I require no escort, Commander.
June, make sure nothing falls into enemy hands.
I'll do what's necessary, sir.
That would not have been a fun trip to Castle Base. Again, Carter moves differently to the other Spartans. His shoulders are hunched and he's carrying his weapon by his side in one hand, rather than in the low ready position. As he makes his way to the Pelican's cockpit, further indicating that he may have accepted the inevitable, you and Emil, still with weapons at the ready and looking out, jump on board and watch Halsey's lab collapse in on itself. And I'm assuming Emil had magnetic boots enabled for this scene, because if not, holy shit. Following a skirmish with Banshees, Carter is mortally wounded, telling you and Emil to take Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn on foot.
I'll do what I can to draw their fire. Six! That AI chose you. She made the right choice.
A great line that carries impact. Carter may have personally given up at this point, but he still has a role to play in safeguarding humanity's last hope, drawing the Covenant air threat away from you and the package. That mountain looks rather familiar, and that storm very ominous. While Reach's environmental storytelling reaches its crescendo arguably with the return to Sword Base, it's during the final mission where the art department went full send. In the background, Covenant air and ground forces are everywhere. The sound of battle is echoing in the distance. The skybox is red and choked with smoke, with the only light above the Pillar of Autumn, your final destination. The planet is well and truly lost. You now have to get the hell out of here. After a hot drop, you and Emil fight through various ground forces, including scarabs, until you can go no further.
We can get past this, sir.
No, you can't. Not without help.
Commander, you don't have the firepower.
I've got the math.
Solid copy. Hit him hard, boss.
You're on your own, Noble. Carter out.
Carter's death is haunting. I recall criticism at the time of release saying it felt cheap, or that Noble Team was seemingly having some sort of who can have the noblest death competition. But as we've seen, I think there is more to Carter's sacrifice than just plot convenience. It's just very subtle and is shown to the player rather than being explained. Perhaps it's penance for not protecting Kat. Perhaps it's the last desperate act of a career soldier doing his part for humanity. Or perhaps it's that Carter comes to terms with the reality that a lone wolf was always going to be the hero of this story, despite him being the ultimate team player himself. Whatever the reason, Carter puts the block on for you with his Pelican, and then it's just you and Emil against an entire army of Covenant hell-bent on stopping you reaching the Pillar of Autumn.
This is Captain Keyes of the Pillar of Autumn. We are tracking you, Noble, and we've begun our launch sequence. Proceed to dry dock, platform D. I'll be on it myself to receive the package.
We'll be there, sir.
Better be, soldier, because my countdown has no abort.
And the only way this scene could slap any harder was if they cued Breaking Benjamin's Blow Me Away at this exact moment. You then fight through the Halo Reach Beta invasion map and arrive at the Pillar of Autumn. Emil makes a move for the anti-air gun to provide cover for you as you tangle with the incoming ground forces. This fight is particularly difficult on Legendary, but sure enough you clear the lane and the man himself joins you at the LZ to take possession of Cortana. But the Covenant have a final surprise in store with the Elite Zealots returning. Emil manages to take down two before going down swinging, and then it's just you, the lone wolf. It's probably worth noting at this point, although I'm sure many of you have already noticed, that each noble death is an irony that reflects their personality. George's desire to sacrifice himself to save Reach, only to not be there when the fight escalates. Kat, so busy questioning the chain of command that she loses her focus on her surroundings, to deadly consequences. Carter being Noble Team's leader, yet not being chosen to deliver the package himself, forcing him to accept Six as the carrier and the last hope, relinquishing his authority as Noble leader to ensure that Six makes it to the LZ. Emil, the close quarters specialist with a bias for action, being stabbed in the back while asking who's next. It's all great stuff, and I'd bust my clam if I was a high school literature teacher. Anyway, you then have to fight through the remaining zealots and utilise the Mac Cannon to protect the Pillar of Autumn's escape. This is great game design. The illusion that it's your choice to remain behind and protect the Autumn's escape, and then allowing you to play through those actions, rather than leaving it to a cutscene. The satisfaction you receive from killing the zealots is short-lived as you find Emil's body, but there's no time to dwell on it as Covenant air fills the sky. On anything harder than normal, this fight very much feels like you're alone and outgunned. Eventually, you take down the incoming Covenant cruiser and the Pillar of Autumn escapes, as you watch the cruiser break orbit and escape the burning world. Reach's story ending with the opening of Halo Combat Evolved, including the original voice recordings of Cortana and Captain Keyes.
Cortana, all I need to know is, did we lose them?
I think we both know the answer to that.
Well done, soldier.
Your actions have given humanity a fighting chance, and Spartan 117 will take it from here.
Think anybody could have survived that?
You mean Beta Red? They say Spartans never die, but I don't think anything lived through that.
But it's not over yet. Following the credits and a letter from Bungie thanking you for your passion and commitment over the last decade, you are treated to Halo's first playable epilogue. The mission is simply survive. This epilogue mission is perfect. A bittersweet ending that captures the themes of Reach. You can fight, you can hide, but you cannot win, as more and more waves of enemies begin to swarm your position, the bodies of other Spartans littering the battlefield. Eventually you'll take enough damage to crack your visor, but you continue to fight until your health depletes. Noble Six takes off their helmet and you watch their final moments from your helmet's POV. The barrage of plasma fire is overwhelming as more and more elites begin to overrun the position, each more eager than the last to land the final strike. The music builds to a crescendo as an elite zealot makes the final strike. Your helmet lies broken amidst the smoke of a burning world. Reach is lost and you fought to the last to save it. From the beginning, you knew the end. Reach had balls, man. I'll never forget what it felt like when I saw my visor crack for the first time, realising that my character wasn't going to survive this time. Man, what a moment in gaming. I get chills today thinking about it. But more than the campaign, Reach had balls in terms of the meta decisions Bungie made around the game too. They changed Halo's formula, its focus and tone when the world was screaming for Master Chief in Halo 4, instead giving them a prequel that no one asked for. And yet, Reach enhances the original trilogy so well in hindsight, it really does seem like the most logical creative choice they could have made. It was a huge creative risk to tell another story not centered on the Master Chief so shortly after Halo ODST, and introducing a whole new gallery of characters, and yet it worked. It was a huge risk to rebuild the engine after the success of Halo 3, and yet the drive and innovation from Bungie was too powerful not to. It was a risk to write completely new music for the game, replacing the iconic Halo score and choir with war drums. It was a risk to introduce new weapons into a prequel sandbox that was soon going to go back to square one in Halo Combat Evolved, and yet it worked. In short, Reach was a calculated creative risk, bringing to bear decades of experience to execute on a damn near perfect game and a fitting end to Bungie's work on Halo. And while Reach is an absolute masterclass in what right looks like in terms of a company allowing a studio of talented and experienced creative to do their thing, it's the game's themes that make it truly timeless and special. If you ask most people how they would classify Halo in terms of a genre, they'd probably say it's sci-fi, and they wouldn't be wrong. But sci-fi has never played nicely within the pigeonholes of genre. What is sci-fi can also be horror, action, fantasy and adventure. Halo is a bit of all these genres. The Flood are primarily a horror trope. The Forerunners, the fantastical. The UNSC Covenant War on the Halo Rings of the Ark, action adventure with some serious military fiction vibes. As a result, the core Halo story is closer to a galactic epic or space opera than conventional science fiction. What Reach does that is different to the story of the Master Chief, whose heroic actions fit neatly within the epic stakes and scale of the human Covenant space opera, is demonstrating the human cost of that galaxy-sweeping conflict. And more than illustrating it, it does so with a sense of military authenticity and war journalism cinematography that sells the conflict as visceral, plausible and genuine. As a keen observer, you may have noticed all the military radio chatter accompanying the video's chapters. For me, this is the underpinning of Halo's story DNA. The UNSC and its grounded military aesthetic. As a first-person shooter, Halo's stories are at their best when they're told alongside the UNSC, alongside the soldiers on the ground fighting to save humanity. Bungie's Halo understood this, blending the first-person shooter genre with military sci-fi and just the right amount of epic scale so as to not burst the immersion bubble, lest the story slip into melodrama. Compounded by an absolutely brilliant marketing campaign, this is what makes Reach so impactful. Its unapologetic authenticity. Reach very much feels like future human history. Reach was a real planet, with real inhabitants that fought with a real military to protect real people. Not a Marvel comic book superhero movie with cardboard cutout villains, but a haunting reminder that nothing worth having comes without cost, and that sometimes a brighter future is forged by those who will never see it. But therein lies one of Reach's key messages, that no matter how dark things get, or how impossible the odds may seem, some things must be fought for. Hope must endure, even if you personally never get to see that hope realised. If the Halo trilogy is the epic space opera of heroism, then Reach is the gritty military science fiction backstory of sacrifice that frames the trilogy's stakes and the cost humanity bears in their war with the Covenant. In short, Halo Reach shows why Chief's fight matters.
Someone, anyone, please respond!
Taking my rose-tinted glasses off for a moment, I'd better speak to that primary lore controversy I mentioned at the start of the video.
It took you long enough.
The Fall of Reach novel, which chronicles the origins of the Spartan 2 program and John 117 in particular, was written by Eric Nyland at the behest of Microsoft and was published roughly a month before the release of Halo CE back in 2001. And unfortunately, it does not play well with Bungie's Halo Reach in terms of key events. In fact, as a fan of both stories, I found myself doing some absolute mental gymnastics to account for the location of the Pillar of Autumn during the Battle of Reach, and to justify the existence of Spartan 3s, which should have been nowhere near Reach in August 2552, at least based on the novels published up until that point. Ultimately coming to the conclusion that the two stories could not coexist without one giving way to the other. This debate formed a great schism within the Halo fandom at the time. as fans debated which story was to take precedence. Was it the origin of the Master Chief, the main character of Halo, and his actions during the fall of Reach, or the news story of Noble Team in Halo Reach? In my own mind, I accepted some timeline liberties to allow the two stories to coexist, although if I were to ever adapt the story, the Pillar of Autumn would remain in orbit to allow Chief's assault on the orbital platform from the novel. This would see Noble 6 delivering Cortana to a shuttle bound for rendezvous with a Halcyon-class cruiser, rather than the ship being in dry dock. This allows for the major event's culmination to occur more or less unchanged between the two stories. That actually might be a good idea for a future video. That said, despite reconciling these events in my own mind, the fandom never truly reached consensus on the matter. The debate remains open to this day, so let me ask you a question. Which story makes the most sense in terms of canon precedence? The one commissioned by Microsoft and written prior to the release of the first Halo that served as equal parts lore dump, context setting and marketing for Microsoft's new sci-fi first-person shooter? Or the one written by one of the original writers in conjunction with the team that had fought in the trenches for a decade to get the Holy Trinity made? A story that sought to thematically frame and enhance Master Chief's future endeavours against the tragedy of the fall of Reach, making the ending of Halo 3 all the more impactful.
This one has its mind concluded.
As you may have gathered, I have a bias on this one. Not only because Microsoft and 343 have fumbled the Halo franchise so spectacularly over the last decade that it's hard to endorse anything they've commissioned, and that's coming from someone who was a bit of a Halo 4 defender at the time of release. But also because when canon changes are affected by the original creators, I see this as less of a retcon and more of a realignment to the initial vision. For me, it's a no-brainer. The core medium of Halo is games. A vast majority of the original Bungie team worked on Halo Reach. It therefore takes priority when there's a contradiction between the two stories. And if we're speaking plainly in terms of retconning, Bungie's Halo Reach gives far more to the canon than it takes away. I can accept that not all parties will feel the same, but when we look at 343's retcons, adaptions and course corrections that followed Reach, were Bungie's changes really that bad? Not in the opinion of this jellyfish, but I'll let you be the judge.
Did anyone else make it?
Scanning. Just dust and echoes.
So, the lessons from Halo Reach are clear. If Halo is going to take its place as the king of console shooters once again, some foundations need to be understood and implemented by Halo Studios before moving forward. Multiplayer needs to be designed with community, fun, and the virtual couch at the forefront. Co-op, creativity, and collaboration must trump competition. This includes Forge and Firefight. But I'll settle for the days of Halo 2 in the short term and just focus on getting multiplayer right first. Halo was first and foremost a party game that just happened to be a first-person shooter. Realigning multiplayer to the original vision would prove 343, or whatever they're calling themselves today, can get multiplayer right before unleashing Forge and the community thereof to save the day. Sorry, sweaty streamers, but nothing screamed Halo harder than two system-linked Xboxes on two TVs set opposite each other, with insults and Coke cans being thrown between couches during a game of Capture the Flag. While this may not be possible physically anymore, the spirit of it was captured in Halo Reach's multiplayer and its post-match lobbies, and it wasn't so long ago that it cannot be so again. In terms of campaign, it needs to go back to being in the dirt alongside its UNSC Marines. Story stakes and a sense of scale need to be set so that players and or viewers can understand what they're fighting for and why it matters. And to do that, the UNSC needs to be at the center of the story, not just window dressing for the Spartans. Because at the end of the day, Spartans are soldiers too, not superheroes. So keep their bloody helmets on. Start digging in. But most importantly, Halo at its core is a story of human hope against overwhelming odds. Anyone can be a hero given the right circumstances. And what better circumstances than a soldier? Fighting to save the ones they love from an enemy hell-bent on the destruction of humankind. And if that soldier just so happens to be wrapped in Mjolnir armor that I can customize to my preference within the aesthetics of the story, then all the better. Get those bloody bunny ears out of here before I punch a whale. Only with these conditions set could we see a Halo resurgence worthy of the fandom that cultivated the franchise to the global success it was in 2010.
Were it so easy?
Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but Reach taught me an important lesson about hope, so I guess there's only one question remaining. Do you have it?
Yes.
Say the words, please.
I have it.
But remember, I'm just a brainless lump. Now please excuse me while I try to change Reach's ending one more time. Uru, Skipper.